another episode of the Real Estate Vibe Show. I'm your host, Winky Lumba. Today, I have a very good friend of mine, Edmund Chien, with us. Welcome, Edmund.
Hi, Vicky. It's great to be here.
I'm so excited to have you with me today. So a little bit about Edmund. He's a coach for client-facing real estate syndicators. He's an experienced financial professional with over 15 years experience managing money for high net worth investors. He's a former senior partner of a private equity firm that managed $500 million with B in assets for accredited investors and family offices. Edmund was also a licensed stockbroker and an estate planner. His main focus has been finding new accredited clients and investor relations. Welcome again, Edmund. It's going to be an exciting show with you today.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So I'm going to start with my favorite question that I ask everybody, and I love asking that. If you can tell me at present state, right now, at this moment, how do you feel about yourself professionally as well as at the personal level?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that I've really hit my stride in looking at where I am. I'm completely content or incredibly content with what I do as a coach. I really do enjoy helping people become their best selves. And if you take a look back at my career, that's pretty much what I've done from the beginning, all the way from when I was in school, throughout my journey in financial services, had always been mentoring other advisors and helping them really progress and advance, as well as helping clients really achieve their financial goals. So a lot of that has been helping people achieve their dreams and achieve their goals, which I 100% of my time, or most of my time now, I focus in on helping people do that.
How did you start? I mean, you've been always in the financial services, or you did something else before and then pivot to financial?
Yeah, that's a interesting question, and a lot of people don't realize that even though I spent 15 years in high finance, I don't actually have a finance background. My bachelor's, I have a bachelor's of fine arts in theater. So I'm in Toronto, so I went to the top theater school in Canada, which is like the Canadian Juilliard, right in the heart of downtown Toronto, which is called the Ryerson Theater School. And we did a lot of productions, and I worked on a lot of productions that even went over to Broadway and won Tony Awards. So I worked for a very large theater company. But even back then, my desire was really to become a producer of productions, of entertainment. And I had, in my 4-year degree, I learned how to create the shows, but I was really weak on the business side of things. So what ended up happening is I decided I wanted to get some more business credentials. And I realized that in theater, if you're the executive producer, which raises all the capital for the production, you control everything else down the line. So what I ended up doing is, you know what, that's what I wanted to learn how to do. So I started to, as I was getting a salary, I started to study a little bit self-interested as well about personal finance. And I realized that it's probably in combination with getting some business credentials. So, and it would be beneficial to me as well. So I did a lot of studying about personal finance, stumbled on Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's a lot of people's origin story as well. So throughout the 90s or late 90s, just as Rich Dad, Poor Dad came out, started reading that, caught the bug, and I realized that I wanted to focus my attention on real estate and cash flowing assets. And I came across a private equity firm that was doing exactly that. So kind of snuck my way in there and caught a big break. Started out on the phones as a cold caller, low-level cold caller. And I guess I originally only intended to be there for a couple of years to get some credentials so that I can get back, or get some business credentials and get some business, sort of business cred, and go back into theater. But after 4 years or 5 years, I started mentoring people. I started training people. I used a lot of my theater skills that I learned and I applied them into finance with things like confidence, taking on a persona, being confident about what you're saying. And I ended up just, people started looking at me and it's like, hey, can you start training and mentoring other people to do exactly what you do? And after 4 years, I started getting accounts. I started managing my own accounts. I started building my own book of business. 10 years later, I'm managing $70 million. I have a team of 5 advisors that I'm mentoring, and I just can't leave because I have so many clients that have entrusted me with their livelihoods. And it was just becoming very difficult to return or go back to theater. Plus, I'd have to take like a massive pay cut in order to do it. Like I get paid like 10% of what I was making. So it becomes almost impossible to leave. So that's kind of how I got started.
So in the theater, you were executive producer, right? So you said they do capital raise as well. So I'm a little bit familiar with that role. But why real estate? How did you pivot to real estate from there? Because your focus was entertainment. And raising capital for a firm is good too, because I know some people reach out to me all the time too. Okay, they're raising capital, they found money to invest with them. So just wanted to understand that journey, that shift from executive producer to real estate.
Right. Yeah. So when I was in theater, I was more of an intern. So I was working in advertising departments, marketing departments on the business side, but also working on the technical side. And I was starting to focus more and more on the business side, really trying to build my way up through advertising to become a producer. And they wouldn't let me become a producer because I don't have any business credentials. And that's why I wanted to get it. And I guess the pivot over into real estate was really what Rich Dad Poor Dad was saying, is this whole concept of the wealthier invest in real estate, but cash flowing real estate. So some of the biggest pension plans in the world have a significant component invested in private equity real estate. So directly owned real estate, some of them quite large assets. And you can start very small from one condo all the way up to like unlimited. You can have a massive commercial property or commercial portfolio of properties. So it's incredibly scalable, but it all produces cash flow. I think the biggest part of what Robert talks about in his book is he says that any idiot can do this. And I looked at my wife and I said, well, I look in the mirror and I see an idiot. So if any idiot can do this and do it right and it becomes successful, why not? Why not do this thing? Because I'm not a quant or quantitative analysis, but I'm not a quant and pick stocks and being able to look at, what are the next up and comer. I'm more of a value guy. And that's some of the things that Robert talked is that it's possible. You can do it as long as you just continually apply yourself. So based on that, I said, hey, I think that I can at least dedicate the next 4 years to my life doing this. And it turned out to be 15.
So was that an easy transition for you because you had the skill set that you acquired being an executive producer, and then you transfer those skills into real estate? So how did you start in real estate? Did you invest with somebody or did you raise capital for some deal?
Right. Well, I wanted to learn about it, and I was about to buy my first property after doing all my research. And I was a little nervous about it, like many people do. And that's when I came across this private equity firm. So I went in and I met the boss, and he said to me, well, you need to be an accredited investor before I can start talking to you. And so essentially you need $1 million in net worth. And on top of that, our annual fee is about $3,000 plus. So you need $3,000 to just even talk to us. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, I don't even have $1 million, let alone be able to pay $3,000 for advice. So I realized that there's no way I could be an LP. There's no way I could be an investor and learn that from them. Then it dawned on me. It's like, well, what if I work for you? And I realized it's like, hey, if you can get on the phone and you can sell on the phone and find clients, then I promise you, I will grow the firm underneath you. And as the firm grows and as we put you in front of clients, we have to teach you. We have to tell you everything we know because you represent us. Mm-hmm. So it's like, hey, that's great. So not only will I get all your advice and you'll teach me everything you know, you'll also pay me so it's the other way around. So I'll learn everything you know and you'll pay me to do it. And it's like, yeah, as long as you can bring in money, that's your part of the deal, which is as long as you can find clients and bring people in, we'll teach you this and we'll pay you to do it. I was like, excellent. That was a really good proposition. So that's how I ended up starting that. Was it an easy transition? No, I think part of it is, well, for me, yes and no. What I really looked at is when you transition into an industry like this, is you got to take a look at what you have that other people don't, that you bring to the table. And is there a way that you can leverage it? So what I ended up doing is I was cold calling. I was on the phone. I'm calling 8 to 9 hours a day. And I realized like, well, what do I have that other people don't? Well, what I have is theater experience. So I know how to build a persona and sound a certain way. I'm very cognizant of my tone and my pace and my cadence of speaking. Those are all incredibly important things when it comes to sales or client facing. So essentially all I did was I would just watch Wall Street a couple of times, and Bud Fox is the main character and he's a cold caller. He's a phone guy. And I just started emulating that. It's just like, well, how do you sound like a person on the phone? This is, early 2000s. So I did that. And then I ended up sounding in about a year later, the person that was managing all the cold callers stops and he says, hey, Ed's the only guy who gets it. Everybody else here just looks like, you're all faking it. Ed's the only guy who gets it. He doesn't even sound like a Toronto broker. He sounds like a Manhattan broker, right? A Manhattan, cold caller. So I want you to start listening because he's the only guy who gets it. So we want you to start listening to Ed, and Ed, we want you to start training them. And that's how I started mentoring people. And I started realizing the differences of how you sell people It's there's a saying that I use when I coach people. I tell them that logic will get people to think, and emotion will get people to act. And that's incredibly important, because when you're selling, if you default, like if you're an engineer and you're a very technical person, you will default to logic. And if you explain that to your prospects and clients, you'll just get them to think. But when you're raising capital, you need people to act. And when they act, that's an emotional thing. People's personal finances and money is incredibly emotional. So why not take advantage of that and be able to talk to them on that emotional level? That's what I ended up leveraging and realizing. So in theater is, I spent 4-year degree based on understanding the human condition and understanding emotion. That's essentially what that degree is all about. So I use that to leverage and bring that into finance. And that was my, that was my secret power, I guess.
Yeah, I think so too. I really like that emotion versus logic, because if you go with logic, you're just using your mind. But when you're using the emotion, you're talking from the heart. And then you connect with the people faster if you're using your heart, if you're using the emotions. So what was your first pitch like when you started calling people or starting finding clients versus now? How did that differ?
I think when I first started, everything was scripted. It's scripted really, really tightly, because there's a lot of regulations of what you can and can't say. And I think that was the first thing that I started to develop and explain to people. And this is what I learned through theater that people in finance didn't understand. They gave everybody, all the cold callers, a script, and people would be reading off of that. And if you take a look at it, the script is just, because if you research, if you Google communication, nonverbal communication, the words itself is only about 7% of communication. Something like 30% is tone, and the rest of it is all body language. That's the majority of communication. And people don't understand this. And I say, well, or people, it doesn't really register. And I explain to people, it's like, well, if you take any script of a movie that has won an Oscar and you and I act it out. So you and I take the script and we act it out. I guarantee you, I promise you, we're not going to win an Oscar. But if you put it in the hands of George Clooney, Morgan Freeman, and all these other different well-trained actors, they can win an Oscar, because it's not about the words. It's about the body language. It's about the tone. It's about the pace, all these types of things. That's more important. So as I started to realize that, I looked at the script and tried to say it in a way that didn't sound scripted. So I still stayed within the boundaries, but it sounded like it was the first time I was saying it, and I was just saying it to you. Because when I do that, I don't sound like a cold caller anymore. I sound like a person that's genuinely talking to you. And so that's what I started to do. That's how I started to change that script. So it made it sound like you're talking to a real person instead of a robot.
Yeah, you said it very well, because a lot of time, if it's a script, people think they're just talking to some automated system or some computer system. They do not get that human touch or human feel to it. And our real estate game is more like a relationship based. It's not about transactional. Yes, it is transactional at some point, but mostly it's a relationship, because you have to get them the confidence and the trust, so people can trust you with their money or with their decisions. So how did, you influence the people in a way that they're making the decision that was in your favor? Like you showed them, like you're adding value to them by bringing the investment opportunity to them. Like it's more like a value to them versus, they think like, oops, he came to me, or he asked for my money, So it's not like a ask, it's more like, oh, I want to do something like that.
Yeah. The biggest part I would explain when it comes to raising capital is this concept of empathy. Empathy, not to be confused with sympathy. Empathy is understanding the world from the other person's perspective. So what is it like being in their shoes? So if you want to be an exceptional capital raiser, empathy has got to be a core characteristic. And knowing when you meet people, what are they thinking? What are they really worried about? And if you can read it out to them just by reading their body language and what they're saying and understanding what they're saying and pick out their pain points without them saying it to you, you will shock them first off. But empathy done incredibly well is interpreted by people as kindness. So if you become an empathetic person and you be able to confide in people and recognize and be able to tell them, I know what your biggest concerns are, I know what your biggest worries are, without them telling you, then you can validate. Then I've had people that break down in tears in front of me because I have that understanding. And then once you've done that, I think the biggest part of when you look at money management is that's the building blocks of building trust. Trust is incredibly important in financial services. So how do you get somebody's trust is the people that, like I had one client, he said to me, my primary choice of who to manage my money would be myself. But I run I'm a busy executive, so I'm a busy CEO of a company, and I don't have that time. But if I could, I would want to clone myself and have myself manage my money and then have myself run my business. But I can't do that. And it dawned on me that the closer I can explain to him how his values, or at least I understand his values and I can respect his values and read his values out to him without him having to tell me, that's how I got a large amount of accounts. So these people say that my children are very important to me, or growth is very important to me, principal preservation is very important to me, or tax management is very important to me. Whatever those main things are, based on that person's life cycle, you can take a lot of times I'm guessing, but I can usually guess pretty accurately after doing it for 15 years. So I can walk into a client and say, well, I have a feeling that this is maybe your biggest concern. And it's like, holy smokes, you're absolutely right. That's exactly what my biggest concern is. And it's like, well, what if I could tell you that that's exactly what my specialty is? And that's what my focus is. And I will hold that and I make a note of that and recognize that this is the number one thing that you need to work on, or that you want to protect or safeguard or grow. And that's how you bring in that account. Because when you start to read their values back to them and show them that you respect it and you value it, or you value it as well, you start looking exactly like them. You're the closest thing to the clone that they can find.
You said it very well. And that skill set comes with the good listening skills, because if you're a good listener, you'll pick up the cues and then you'll be able to steer the conversation in whatever direction you want. But if you're just thinking about what should I say next, you're going to miss that opportunity. You know what I'm saying? It happens,
Yeah.
sometimes when you initially come into the capital raise game, you're just always thinking, how should I do that? How should I convince that? So you're just focusing on those thoughts versus actively listening what other person is saying, or what their pain points are, or what their needs are. So accordingly, you can cater to them. So you put it very well. I like that. Thank you. And what other techniques and skills that you acquired or worked for you throughout your career, if you can share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So you brought up a really good point when you said the listening skills. And I like to advance that a little bit further. So listening skills is like sales 101. And people talk about that all the time. And they say that you have to have good listening skills when you're out raising capital or you're out selling. The next level beyond that is understanding to read body language. And the next level above listening skills is emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence is two ways. One is understanding the emotions in the room, of the people in the room, and understanding your emotion and how you read off to them. That's really strong emotional intelligence, and how to find that good balance between the two. And from that, that's when you can really start to pick up cues that you might have missed before. In order to know and be able to watch for emotional intelligence and body language, is you have to know your material and your script almost by heart. Like, so it's second nature. So the first time I went out, I memorized the pitch that my boss or my mentor told me. So I'm focused in on making sure I get the pitch exactly right. And I'm so focused in, and all my energy is about the pitch, that I'm missing the body language of the people in the room. But after I started saying the pitch over and over and over again, it goes into what we call autopilot. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi calls that the sense of flow. So if you can get that into the part of the brain where it becomes autopilot, it's kind of like when you're driving. When you take your driver's test, you really got to focus in and concentrate on driving. But after you've been driving for a long time, you can eat a bagel, you can talk to your friend in the other car or in the other seat, and it becomes second nature. You don't really think about driving anymore. So the first step is get to the point where you can run the entire pitch from open all the way to close and do it automatically, so you can spend more time watching the body language and the emotional intelligence of people in front of you.
Yeah, you said it very well, because you're not tensed then, right? If you're doing it first time or second time, your pitch, you're going to be so focused on your words, what's coming out of your mouth, or you're going to try to think, do I remember this correctly or no? And the body's going to tense up, and then you're not relaxed. So if you're not relaxed, you're not receiving either, because you are so much kind of engrossed within yourself. Wow, that's a good thing that you shared. Thank you so much for sharing that. But the other question now it comes is that you've been working with the institutional investors too for a long time. So I would like to ask you that question, how to build those relationships and how to nurture those relations so that you can bring that big investors into your deals.
Yeah, I would say that I wouldn't really classify my skill set as institutional investors. So there's kind of like a range. You start off with newly accredited investors, so just newly $1 million, all the way up to multi-millions. And the higher you get, so it's a range, right? So then when you get to 10 million and above, and it starts turning into legacy money. So once you start getting north of 10 million, or people that have more money than they will ever need in their lifetime, it starts to transition over to family office kind of management, where you start off with a multi-family family office. So an organization that deals with many small families at like 10 million to 50 million. And then you'll get, then it turns into that range as the higher you get. Then eventually you end up with a single family office where it's big enough where they hire full-time employees just for their family. And that's like at the 100 million plus, right? Like the Hiltons, for an example, right? They have full-time employees that work at their, work at their trust or work at their organization. And then once you get to the larger family offices like the Rockefellers, you might as well be institutional money. So trying to sell the Rockefellers is almost like trying to sell the New York Firefighters Association or a pension plan, or the California Public Pension Plan is the largest pension plan in America, right? So it all starts in ranges. It's not like it stops at a certain point. It just starts to evolve. So for me, my max or my top was probably a multifamily family office. So working with a lot of ultra high net worth families that wanted to create legacy and estate planning.
So what kind of skill set do you need, or how do you get to this ultra high net worth people, Because you said there's a range, you start from the bottom and slowly you move up. So what is the trajectory, or what skill set you need to have? How do you move up, or how do you, bring yourself up in that range so you're kind of at the ultra high net worth level?
Right. So that's a really good question. So a big part of it is understanding what weight class you're in. So just using a boxing term, is you want to be careful not to try to punch in a weight class or be part of a weight class that's beyond you. And because you can get into a lot of trouble. Basically, what it comes down to is take a look at the individuals that whoever you want to prospect to, take a look at who are the other professionals that they get advice from. And do you look and sound a lot like them as well? So if you want to be institutional money, if you're managing or you're trying to get the confidence of somebody with 10 million or above, I don't know a single person in that or a single advisor in that range that doesn't read the Wall Street Journal every day and know exactly what's going on and have a comment about economics. Like you have to be almost like a nationally respected economist, or at least can talk to economists without embarrassing yourself. Because if you walk into the room, if you're trying to talk to $100 million client and you walk into the room and there's going to be a RIA, there's going to be a tax accountant, and there's going to be a tax lawyer, right? And you're going to be talking to them. And if they ask you questions on current economics and where you think interest rates are going, what do you think Jerome Powell is going to be doing? And you don't even know those names, and you don't even have a comment on what's going to happen in political unrest in the current environment. Good luck. You're going to seem like an amateur, and you're not going to get any kind of confidence whatsoever. So take a look at all the other people that person gets advice from and see, can you hold that weight class? So if you haven't raised capital before, I would encourage people to start off with raising capital from newly accrediteds, and then ask them, where do you get your investment advice? And if they say they get their investment advice from TikTok, then take a look at what they're looking at and say, you know what, I know a lot more than what these people are talking about, and then be able to bring in better value to them. But if the person is like $100 million and they say, oh, we get our advice from this, we get our advice from KPMG and Deloitte, and they're our investment advice. Plus, they're also, we also have this person from Morgan Stanley. And you walk into a room and there's a Deloitte a Morgan Stanley advisor. And they start asking, and you start talking to them. You look completely different to them, and you can't hold your own. You're just going to embarrass yourself, right? And you're going to lose reputation.
Oh, that's very insightful. So you kind of need to fill yourself with all the knowledge. Kind of, you need to be well versed in order to figure out who your avatar is, or what network you're trying to make relations with, right? You need to understand that circle before you're going in, so you're prepared yourself for all kind of conversations, right? Let's say if you said you step into some network who are everybody's ultra high net worth, and they have their managers who are managing them, advising them. So you need to understand that what kind of conversation you're going to be carrying with them. You don't want it to stumble. That's what you're trying to say?
Yeah, a big part of it. And it's kind of like if you're just starting out, to use professional football for an example, if you're just starting out and you've played a couple of pickup games, at the local park, and then you think that, hey, you know what, I think I can play in the NFL. I think I can go and it's like if you just move from a pickup game in your backyard all the way to thinking that you're going to go to the NFL in one step, you're going to get crushed. You will get creamed. There's many steps along the way to build yourself up to that. Financial services is very similar. Because if you start off by saying, this is my first capital raise, and I hear this quite a lot, people think that, well, they imagine that there's this magical word called family office, and it comes in like a white knight, and they'll just drop $10 million onto your project. I'm not saying it's impossible. Just like I'm not saying that you can't go from a backyard game to winning the Super Bowl in like 1 year. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's unlikely. And here's where you're at huge risk, is that if you bring in $100 million team, or a $100 million client, they have so many professionals and so many lawyers that they will go through their due diligence and go through all your closing documents. They'll go through all your OM or PPM. And if there's one kind of loophole, or there's something that they notice that's wrong, they're not going to tell you. And if you end up in a lawsuit against them, you're going to show up with your cousin's uncle that that maybe wrote just called to the bar, and then you show up to that meeting and there's going to be 10 lawyers on the other side of the table, right? So, or they'll write things back. So I had this one contact of mine, never raised capital before. This is his first time doing it, and he said that he just got approached by somebody that wanted to place 30 million with him. 30 million. And they wanted to do it quickly because it was a 1031 exchange. So they needed it to be done within 90 days. And I think they're already 30 days into it. So they only had 60 days left. So he had 60 days to place 30 million. He thought it was a big windfall. He thought it was amazing. I told him, do not touch it. I was like, why? I said, well, first off, if you and I had $30 million, Vinky, so you and I had $30 million, we would be able to walk in pretty much any firm on Wall Street and be able to ask them to help us out. Right? So why would they be going to somebody who's never done it before? That's the first question. And then the second question is that if they give you all these terms, they can hit you with a dictionary or like a giant telephone book worth of legal documents. And you don't have the team to do the due diligence and to look at, because it's going to cost you $1 million just to do the due diligence on 30, and you don't have it. And so what's going to happen? You're not going to do it. So you don't know how you're going to be exposed. And it could be very dangerous. It's way too big of a differential between how big they are and how small you are, and it's not in your favor. So you've got to find a team that or be a team that is equivalent to the type of client that you're bringing in. So if you want to bring in a $30 million or 30 million from a $100 million client, you better have a huge network and a huge infrastructure and investment firm behind you. As if you're just one person and you're doing it in your garage, you're probably going to get creamed. It's like showing up with your pads to the combine, or showing up with your pads to spring training on the NFL. You're going to get squashed. It's very dangerous.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that, because you got to see who you are first, before taking the next step. But I wanted to ask you this question. What do you think about all these coachings that, been offered by different mentors out there? There's so many mastermind programs going on, and they're teaching the capital raising strategies and all those things. How much that help, to the newbies just learning those, going through those mastermind programs for a year or 2 or 6 months, would that give them enough skill set to raise money for the bigger deals or whatever level?
Yeah, I think the best way I know how to comment on that is I haven't taken any of those programs. I haven't seen it. So I really can't comment towards its effectiveness. What I can comment on is how I coach people is the way that Bay Street and Wall Street does it. So Bay Street is here in Toronto. That's our financial district. But I can tell you the best practices of how we teach people how to raise capital in the 15, almost 20 years that I've been doing this, right? So there's a specific way that we focus in on how to raise capital from high net worth clients. And that's what I teach people. So it's as if you joined an investment firm and you're a rookie RIA. I'll show you how we do it. So I used to run the rookie program. I went through the rookie, like my rookie program at my brokerage firm. That was a 6-month program. And it was in depth on many different verticals of how to raise capital, many different types of clients, everything from value investors to quantitative analysis, all these different types of methodologies that on top of alternative assets like real estate, but also things like traditional things like in stock market, bonds, as well as life insurance, all those different kind of components. And they're all pretty complex, but understanding the material, but also understanding how to apply it to the average person and be able to raise capital through them. So I teach you how Wall Street does it, which is Wall Street has been doing it for 100 years and how they're doing it today. That's what I teach people. I give you access to that kind of education.
Oh, interesting. Because I was just wondering, because when you join any mentorship program like that, you're just kind of tapping into somebody's network too, besides just, getting their curriculum or the whatever the course they have set up, whatever skill set they're teaching you. So you're tapping into that network too. That might give you some more leverage, right? To raise capital. You think that will help?
It could, but there's a couple of challenges. First, when I encourage people to take a look at coaching and capital raising, ask the question is, have they done it before? And if they have, how long and how much have they raised? So and that would probably be my first criteria. Like, were they an RIA? Do they understand it from many different types of perspectives? Like, were they private equity? Were they licensed stockbroker? Do they understand all these different kind of markets and know where things are going and have raised and conducted a lot of investor relations? Or did they read it in a book and is just trying to teach you? That's the first part. Then the next part of it is that if you take a look at somebody else's network, especially if it's a well-established network and they're all high net worth, you're a foreigner, you're a stranger to that network. And you'll tend to be a wallflower and not fully accepted in that. And I tried that. And I tried to look for really well-established and successful people. And I came in and it's like, why would we let you in? You're not like one of us, right? So say it's like a group of doctors that have been around for like 40 years and incredibly wealthy. And then you pop in, it's like, well, who's Edmund Chien? It's like, you're not a doctor and you're half the age of all of us and you'll stand out right away and nobody will talk to you. And you certainly won't get their respect. A better way to do that is to go and build your own successful network. So how I ended up doing that is go on a network, and this is how you start a relationship with people, which is go out and talk about them first. Everybody wants something. Everybody's looking for something. And the first part of it is help other people advance in their career, help other people advance in their business. And when you can start doing that, they start to become successful. And if you can be one of the people that they are indebted to because of that success, or you can be very pivotal about that success, now you've got a successful person that owes you a favor. And if you just do that with a number of people and everybody in your network, and you start to build this reputation that if you talk to Edmund Chien, he will do his best to try to help you succeed in where you're going. And that's how I built that reputation. And then from then, people started coming to me. I didn't have to go out and prospect anymore. People were just coming to me and telling me their financial goals. And that was the hardest thing to be able to figure out to do. It's like running out of people to talk to about their financial dreams. Well, now I had people calling me, asking me, can you help me out? These are my financial goals. These are my financial, this is my financial understanding. And can you connect me with people? And that's what I started doing. And genuinely caring about other people, and then building that successful network around you instead of trying to, elbow your way into a group that doesn't want you there.
Yeah, I like that, instead of, trying to make yourself fit into the more that who you're not, and that just building your own network, just being authentic yourself. and drawing the people towards you by offering how whatever value proposition you have, offering that to others. I really like that strategy because that way you're building stronger long-term relationships, and it's going to be easy to nurture those relationships as well versus just, you're like trying to pretend who you're not. And it's going to be hard to keep up with that image all the time, right? Because you're not learning anything new if you're just trying to protect yourself and trying to, protect that image, whatever you're trying to create for yourself. So what is next for you now? You have achieved so much and you're so knowledgeable about your all the capital raising or the financial success that you had so far. What next for you? What do you want to do next in life?
I think my next focus that I really want to hone in on is helping other people achieve their dreams, achieve their goals, specifically in this vertical of raising capital. So for real estate syndication. So it's something that I'm really well versed in. I really enjoy it, and I really love sharing this kind of information with people, and I really like helping people grow. I think a big part of that is that I wanted to. I took a look at the next 20 years of my life, and I asked myself, do I want to focus the next 2 decades on helping ultra wealthy people become even wealthier, or helping people that want to up and coming and new advisors and helping them build their wealth and helping them find clients to help build their wealth? And when I took a look at that side, it's also going in and helping flatten out the divide between the haves and the have-nots. And that's more why I set out to do what I do. And I'm really passionate about building wealth, not helping excessive wealth become more excessive. So it started to get to that towards the tail end of my career, because the more experienced you are, the higher net worth you end up working with. And I realized, you know what, I really do enjoy helping build wealth for people, building success for people. And I like helping people achieve those dreams that they don't have just yet. So that's what really resonates with me. So that's one of my main focuses. And the other thing that has started to happen again is, before the pandemic started, I was a public speaker as well, on many different topics, things like mostly related to soft skills and finance. But it's starting to pick up again. So I'm a public speaker. I do that for financial institutions or different organizations. I do public speaking for the Canadian military, for an example, talking about things like soft skills, all those kind of elements. I think that's really important part as how to get interpersonal dynamics. That's really all it is how to improve your interpersonal dynamics, interpersonal skills, and improve your organizational dynamics. That's really important to me. So how to get along better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Figuring out who you are. I think that's the bottom line is, once you know who you are, yeah, you can figure things out. So share one golden nugget with my audience. One more golden nugget.
I think that the best thing to do is that know who you are. So one of the first steps that I do is start off with what we call a personal SWOT analysis. So SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Mm-hmm. So you kind of talked about that just now, which is know who you are. Well, know who you are means, what is the value that you have that other people don't have? And can you leverage what is easy for you and difficult for other people? That's essentially what I'm doing. So that's why I love public speaking so much. I'm probably most comfortable when I'm public speaking. And I know and I've done research on it, and it says that public speaking is probably the #1 fear in the world, above death, right? So, and it's what I find incredibly easy. And I'm very comfortable in that environment. So I would love to compete on that level. That's part of my personal knowing myself, which is most people in society find this incredibly difficult. I find it incredibly easy. That's something that I'd like to focus in on and be able to do.
Great. So this brings us to our rapid fire round. I'm going to ask you 5 questions. You're going to answer in 1 sentence and 1 word only. Are you ready?
Okay.
All right. Who was the most influential person in your life?
I would say my parents or my father.
What is the best book you have read or recommend?
Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
What is your biggest passion?
Helping others become the best version of themselves.
In 1 word, what does life mean to you?
Hope.
What is your favorite food?
Asian food.
That was easy. How can people reach out to you?
People can reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's probably the best. And it's just, so you just find me by my name. So it's Edmund Chien.
Thank you, Ed. I really enjoyed our conversation today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.